Good morning, everybody. It is a beautiful morning in Glens Falls, New York, for those of you out there in Cyberland. Depending where you are, and it might not even be morning, but good, whatever time of day it is for you there on our virtual track, welcome one and all to the Sunday morning continuation of our Oleo stories. In a church, a house of worship, at a funeral, a man in the second row leans forward, taps the new widow on the shoulder. She turns around. He says, "Do you mind if I get up and say a word?" She says, "No, go right ahead." The man stands up and says, "Plethora," and sits back down. Widow turns around, leans over and whispers to the man, "Thank you. That means a lot." Plethora would be a good word to describe the quantity of stories that the Oleo Committee for Sharing the Fire 2026 was faced with. The committee is a small body that reviews the story submissions and chooses who's going to perform in the Saturday night show. There were 27 submissions this year, and the stories were so good that some tall guy with a beard and glasses and in all naiveness and sincerity said, "Hey, why don't we do a second show?" Because there were so many stories that were deserving. And not only did people not laugh at the idea, but it actually happened. So here we are, Sunday morning. We're going to have more amazing stories like we did last night. And we're going to keep it moving along very quickly because we have a lot of tellers for the time slot that we have. So, batting first this morning from Ocala, Florida, via originally North Carolina, our first teller caught his first catfish at the age of 5 with his grandfather holding the rod. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Andy Russell.
You could. I'm gonna be. Yeah. No. Never follow Bruce. I know. Good. Good morning, friends. When I retired a few years back, I had a long list of new activities I wanted to try. But I also knew I wanted to include some type of volunteer work. So I stuffed envelopes at my church, worked at a food bank, picked up trash along a beach. All worthy endeavors, but they left my heart feeling empty. Then I saw a Facebook ad for an animal sanctuary, looking for volunteers to work with lemurs. Oh yeah, those cute little primates with the black and white rings on their tails. Well, the ad said it was a chance to help an endangered species whose natural habitat was being rapidly destroyed. Well, I looked that up. It turns out there are over 100 species of lemurs, and 98% of them are endangered. And the only natural habitat for all of them is Madagascar, this big island off the east coast of Africa. So I'm like, I'll check this out. Well, the sanctuary was out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by farms and forest. They gave me a tour. Each lemur family had its own enclosure with inside and outside sections and access to an above-ground wire tunnel that opened onto a grove of old-growth trees where these lemurs could play and fly and climb through the air and just do lemur stuff. And it was so much fun to watch. I met 4 species that day. The famous ringtails were not nearly as conceited as I thought they might be. The brown lemurs had the prettiest faces. The red lemurs were a bunch of frat boys looking for a good time. My personal favorite were the black and white ruffed lemurs. Now, at a glance, these guys look like escapees from a Dutch Master cigar box with these little black and white bodysuits and these big, white, fluffy Elizabethan collars. But don't let the looks fool you. The black and white ruffs are the mystics of the lemur world. There were 6 of them, sitting cross-legged in the sun, palms raised, heads back, eyes closed. These guys were living in the moment. And I could not fill out that volunteer paperwork fast enough. Well, the work is primarily scooping poop and chopping fruit. So you might be surprised that 5 years later, I was still doing that same work. But the part that kept me coming back is called socialization, which is basically just trying to help these lemurs lead a life as close to what they would have had in the wild as we could make it. You see, the majority of these animals were surrendered by owners, people who once thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a lemur as a pet? So one day I'm working with an abandoned youngster, helping him integrate into a new family. Or another day I'm working with an adult lemur who has never seen another lemur, or climbed a tree, or tasted anything but Fruit Loops. My first experience with socialization was with Apollo, an older black and white ruffed lemur. He was in an enclosure with Augie and Nobi, 2 of the youngest and sweetest babies that we had. So, of course, Apollo wanted nothing to do with them. I was working on the inside part of their enclosure. The babies were literally hanging off of me, and Apollo came in. And I had a piece of banana, so I held it out to him, but Apollo hissed and bared sharp teeth, and I immediately backed off. And as soon as I could, I got out of there. At this point, I was rethinking the wisdom of volunteering with lemurs. But I knew there had to be more to Apollo's story than just having a bad day. So that afternoon, I got some fruit in a bowl and went back to the outside part of Apollo's enclosure. The babies joined me at once, but Apollo stayed inside and out of sight. I tried to dole the fruit out slowly, but it was long gone before Apollo finally came out. He was on a platform about 20 feet away from me. And he watched a little while. And then he moved to ground level and he watched some more. And he repeated this, move a little, watch a little. Move a little, watch a little. Several times until finally he was right beside my chair. I did not move. And then he pulled himself up onto my leg with those sharp teeth inches from my face. I did not breathe. And then he curled into a circle and went to sleep. One of the coordinators quietly approached while I was holding Apollo, and I told her that scooping poop was the most productive thing I had done all day. And she shook her head and pointed to Apollo. That's the most productive thing you've done all day. She shared that Apollo had come in 2 days earlier, along with his lifelong female companion. They had lived their lives as breeders in the exotic animal trade, but were too old to reproduce now. Apollo's companion was showing signs of infection, so she was immediately quarantined and later transferred to a veterinarian. But all Apollo knew was that he had been separated from his closest friend, perhaps for the very first time. And he was surrounded by people and places and creatures he did not know. Overwhelmed, he simply put up all of his defenses and withdrew from the world. I thought about Apollo a lot that weekend. No matter what I was doing, it seemed he was on my mind. When I returned to the sanctuary, I learned that Apollo's companion had died from the infection. Apollo no longer even came out of the inside part of his enclosure. He had become aggressive and bitten one of the staff, so the babies had to be relocated. They had installed a feeder that could be filled from the outside, but it did not matter. Apollo had not eaten in 3 days. As I gathered some food and headed to his enclosure, I realized I had no idea what I was walking into. I really didn't think Apollo would attack me, but what I felt most was this overwhelming sense of helplessness, that there was absolutely nothing that I could do that would make any difference. As I entered the enclosure, Apollo was nowhere to be seen, but as soon as I sat down, he emerged and came straight to me. He pushed that bowl of fruit to the ground, pulled himself onto my lap, and leaned back against my arm. With one hand, he reached up and began to rub the side of my face, softly, gently, until I finally realized that from somewhere deep in his own sadness, Apollo was trying to comfort me. I picked up a piece of banana and offered it to him. Apollo looked at it as if he had never seen a banana before. He leaned forward and looked back into my eyes, the longest gaze we had ever held. And then this magnificent, ancient mystic began to eat, and my heart was full. Thank you.
How many animal lovers here? It's just a wonderful, wonderful story. Thank you for that. And I think it's great also that people are traveling here from far away in the country to tell us a story. So all the way from Florida. Give it up again for Andy Russell. Our next teller comes from North Carolina, so also kind of far away. Pardon? Oh, okay. So I'm introducing you. Pay attention. Yeah, you might learn something about yourself. Yeah. Our next teller was the first female power plant electrician for Carolina Power and Light. Give it up, everybody, for Robin Kitson.
Hello?
There you go. And the folks online have to be able to hear her.
All right. 2, 4, 6, 8. We don't want to integrate. 8, 6, 4, 2. We don't want no chigaboos. I hear that chant in my head to this day. Cannot get rid of it. It was my school. I was 10 years old. I was a red-haired, blue-eyed, freckled-faced little girl living in foster care. My mother and father, they were perpetrators of family violence. And my mother was a sadist in her spare time, getting beat up as well. So it was that I learned that chant. Everybody taught it to us. We were going to go against them. I was living with foster parents, and I had to call Aunt Mary and Uncle Lester. All I knew was that whatever was going to happen was freaking horrid because the grown-ups were bent out of shape. So on one particular day, my Uncle Lester took off work and walked me to school, which was quite unusual. We walked down the street. It was 5 blocks of school. Desire, Gallier, Congress, Independence. We turned left, Pauline, on to Galvez, and I stood right in front of my school. The steps are right there. And the crowd goes bananas. 2, 4, 6, 8, and on it goes. The cops are there, bubble tops, black and white. There's different kinds of people in uniform. Beats me who they are. We have a grill in front of us because New Orleans knows about crowd control. And every now and then a car would pull up and everybody'd scream and holler and stuff fly through the air. But it was the wrong car. It was not those people. You see, they should have stayed where they belong, according to the grown-ups. The people uptown did not have to do this. It was us in the Ninth Ward. And it was us against them that day. Eventually, a car pulled up in front of me, and it was beige or yellow, and light yellow. And there were 4 gigantic Marshalls that had armbands on. It said Marshall. And I looked to see the crowd's going bananas, and I'm screaming my chant. And then the back door opens, and this kid, littler than me, and honey, I'm short. She steps out the car, and she's wearing the same freaking shoes I got on. And I thought, oh, my God. I can remember the days when my mama showed up at school drunk, and my heart just crashed. And here she is. 500 people, grown-ups with signs that have words on them I cannot say, and they're screaming at her. I thought she must be terrified. Where is her mama? Oh, there's her mama. She walks towards me. She's like 10 feet away. She walks past me, and then she turns, and the marshals get around her. They have guns, and they walk across the street, and the stuff goes flying through the air. And I think, oh, my God, is she going to make it? And she makes it up the front steps. She walks like a little tin soldier. And I think, oh, and I start to cry, but I'm not supposed to, so I dab my eyes like this. And as soon as she makes it in the front door, I think, thank God. And I turn to Uncle Lester and I say, I want to go home. So I go home. We wait for school to start again, but school does not start. No white kids are going in that school. I don't know where we're going. Eventually, they tell us you're going to school in Araby. Araby's in St. Bernard Parish. That's a whole big deal most of the time to change from one parish to the next. But we go shoving ourselves into the Carolyn Park Elementary, which is already full. And those kids are not pleased seeing us there. Well, we don't stay very long because we have overcrowded them. They move us over to the Domino Sugar Refinery warehouse by the levee. They have built walls, but they forgot all about the ceilings. That's an interesting concept. So I go in this building, and you can see the roof way up there, 10. And over here is 2 plus 7 equals 9. And over here in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And here I am in my class. There are commas and semicolons, and like you can hear all this stuff. Who the heck can learn? And there's mice running around the dirt floor. And the boys are stomping the mice, killing them. And I think these grown people think this is better. And I'm what in the world? And I wonder about that little girl. How the daylights is she doing? Well, before you know it, they move us again to the Ninth Ward private elementary school on Japonica Street. And we get there, and it's a brand new building made out of concrete blocks, but it's next door to the SPCA. And we have no such thing as air conditioning since 1960. Well, the windows are open, and the dogs are barking, and the teachers, if they know what to do, I'm surprised. I don't know where they found these people. I'm sure they were fine people, but, they didn't know how to teach. So life went on after that. I still wondered about that little girl. I had no idea who the daylight she was. Many years later, I'm sitting in my house, and I'm watching the TV, and here comes this movie trailer. Coming to your TV set this Thursday, the movie, and I see my school. I think, what in the daylights? It says the movie, Ruby Bridges. And I think, oh, that was her name. Now I know her name. Well, I signed up to get online and sign up. I want to talk to her. But she does not show up. Over the years, I have tried to get a hold of her, but she has never reached back out to me. I've tried 3 or 4 different kind of ways. But in 2022, my buddy Sue Halloran, who's sitting in this auditorium here, she brought the 3 girls that integrated the other school on St. Claude Street. And I got to tell them that I am sorry. And it tickled the fool out of me. But I have a blessed life because I saw evil right smack in front of my face at a young age. I know it when I see it. I am not a confused individual. I have a bunch of friends because I have spent my whole life getting to know those people. Don't even try to tell me anything about those people. How do you know that? Have you been to their house? You don't know crap about those people. So I have a bouquet of friends, a beautiful bouquet of different colors from all over the place. And I have developed a new chant for us. 2, 4, 6, 8. Diversity is really great. All together now. 2, 4, 6, 8. Diversity is really great. 8, 6, 4, 2. It's everyone. It's me and you. 8, 6, 4, 2. It's everyone. It's me and you. And that, my friends, is really the truth.
I know I can raise the mic for our next teller and leave it there. Well, how about another hand for our eyewitness to history, Robin Kitson. Whew, whew. It's a powerful experience that no one should ever have to have. Well, our next teller studied storytelling with traditional storytellers in West Africa who gifted her with a traditional name. Please give it up from Harlem, New York, Linda Humes.
Wolaibo manseya ninkale wolaila Simbon manseya ejalia. There is nothing greater than being a jali, a storyteller, because God makes you a jali, and a jali is as great as being a king or a queen. When I say I go, you say I may. I go? I go. Amen. This story is called, When Someone Does Good to You, You Should Return Good with Good. There once was a female eagle, and this female eagle was flying in the sky on her quest for food when she came across a very old woman. The old woman had a terrible sore on her leg. The eagle descended to the old woman, and she asked the old woman how on earth was she able to walk with such a terrible sore. Well, the old woman cried that the sore was so painful that she was not able to walk at all. The eagle looked at the old woman. I can help you, but I know how you human beings are. If I do good to you today, you will return my good with evil tomorrow. Oh, no, 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 said the old woman. Please, if you could help me, help me. So the eagle instructed the old woman to close her eyes. Close your eyes, old woman. Now open them. When the old woman opened her eyes, the sore that was on her leg disappeared. Close your eyes, old woman. Now open them. This time, when the old woman opened her eyes, the forest had cleared. Close your eyes, old woman. Now open them. This last time, when the old woman opened her eyes, there were huts and a marketplace as far as the eye could see. This and everything in it is yours, said the eagle. Oh, how can I repay your kindness, said the old woman. Well, the eagle looked out into the distance. Ah, that cotton silk tree is all that I desire. And she flew to the top of the cotton silk tree. Now, in a few weeks, that old woman had became very prosperous. However, she had a granddaughter that lived with her, and I trust that none of you know any children like this, but what this little girl was, a brat. And she started screaming at the top of her lungs, I want an eagle's baby to chew. I want an eagle's baby to chew. If I don't get an eagle's baby to chew, I'll just die. Now, the eagle had laid 2 baby eagles, and she went out looking for food. The old woman summoned a few of the men from the village. Go to the cotton silk tree and bring the creatures to me. The sound of their axes against the tree was pit, pit, pit. The tree almost fell to the ground when the eldest of the baby eagles cried out for its mother, Sangoi, Sangoi, bird-chai, Sango, if you go to it, come back. Now the female eagle who was on her quest for food heard the cries of her baby eagles, and she flew back to the cotton silk tree. Sangore! And with the sound of her voice, the tree that had almost descended to the ground came back to its upright position. If she comes for you, let her take you, she instructed her children, and she flew off. Now, the next week, that little granddaughter started again. I want an eagle's baby to chew. I want an eagle's baby to chew. If I don't get an eagle's baby to chew, I'll just... So once and again, that old woman summoned a few of the men from the village. Go to the cotton silk tree and bring the creatures to me. The sound of their axes against the tree was pit, pit, pit. The tree fell to the ground. The men went into the nest. They were able to capture the youngest baby eagle. The eldest baby eagle cried out for its mother, Sangoi, Sangoi, bird-chai, Sangoi, if you go to it, come back. Now, when the female eagle flew back to the cotton silk tree and learned the fate of her youngest baby eagle, she flew to the outskirts of town. The old woman took the youngest baby eagle and cooked it with plantain and served it to her granddaughter for dinner. Sangore, Sangore. And with the sound of her voice, the marketplace and the huts disappeared. Sangore. And the trees and the forests returned. Sangore. And the sore that once was on the old woman's leg returned. The elders of the Ashanti people teach us that when someone does good to you, you should return good with good. Medasa.
A go? A go? Give it up again for Linda Hume. All right, our next storyteller grew up just down the road in Richmond, New York. Her husband, in fact, grew up right here in Glens Falls. Now she lives in North Carolina. Now you might know that she uses puppetry a lot in her storytelling, but what you might not know is that she runs a puppet hospital where she is the chief surgeon. Please give it up for Lona Bartlett.
Always, always, we have to lower. We all have our difficulties. Yeah, Richmondville is just down the road from here. So I am so happy to be back at my old stomping grounds. My husband was born here in Glens Falls. I went to college by virtue of a dollar bill. In 1966, I was 5 years old, and banks, a few of them, had decided that it was okay. They were allowing women to open up a savings account under their own name without the signature of a man. Now, my mom had been waiting for this opportunity. And I watched as she came down the stairs, and she was holding a pregnant envelope of cash. She came into the kitchen and she called me to her. She reached in that envelope, she pulled out a dollar bill, and she put it in my small hand. And she looked down. "Come with me, you're going to college." "Mom, I just started kindergarten." But my mom took that envelope of cash and she stuffed it down deep in her short-handled pocketbook, and she snapped it closed, and she pulled it up and she put it up on her shoulder. She took her elbow and pressed it next to that pocketbook like the thing was going to grow legs and run away. And then we got in the car and we drove down to the Bank of Richmondville. When my mom and I walked through those double glass doors, there was a counter and there was a barred window with a man in a suit and tie standing behind that barred window. My mom walked up and she pulled that pocketbook down and she opened it up and pulled out that envelope of cash. And that man and my mom sat there going back and forth, dealing that all those dollar bills between each other, and they counted them several times. And then that man took all that money and he pulled out a little blue book about the size of a passport, and he wrote in it, closed it up, passed it to my mom. My mom took it and she put it down deep in her pocketbook where that cash had been. And then it was my turn. And I walked up to that barred window. I held up my small hand and I handed that man my dollar bill. My mom looked down at me again. "Tell him what it's for. I'm going to college." And that man laughed and laughed and laughed. But he took my dollar bill. He got out another little blue book. He wrote it in it. He gave it to me. I took it from his hand. Then my mother reached over, grabbed it from me, and put it in her pocketbook. But that man behind the window then pulled out a lollipop and he passed it to me. "Interest is compounded monthly." I took that candy, I took off the wrapper, and I put it on my tongue, and the taste was sweet. From then on, every Friday, my mother gave me a dollar bill. We went down to the Bank of Richmondville, and I deposited my dollar bill into my savings account, my college account. Well, 7 years went by, and there were 7 years of Friday dollars, and I did some really quick calculations. And I realized that my mom had turned 17, graduated from high school, and World War II began. Well, we were studying World War II in school, and so I went to my mom and said, "Mom, what were you doing during the war?" Oh, my mom was from South Carolina. Well, I was in Seattle, Washington, and I was inspecting B-17 bombers for Boeing. And she told me about how she had to crawl all over that airplane, and she would have to fill all of the rivets and all of that sheet metal to make sure that it was absolutely flat. If it was up just a little bit, then the air could catch under it. And if the plane went down and crashed, it would be my fault. I guess I did a good job, though, because then they sent me down to New Mexico, and there I inspected hand grenades. Mom, how do you inspect a hand grenade? Well, they would have them in lots, in batches. And I would just at random have to pick one up. And then I would pull the pin out, and I'd go out to this area. I'd pull the pin, and then I'd throw it. And then I had to hide behind a wall and wait for it to explode. If it exploded, then the whole batch was good. And if it didn't, then it meant that the batch was bad and they'd destroy it. PTSD was not reserved for only the soldiers in the field. But honey, that's not your story, that's mine. Don't worry, you're never going to have a job like that. No, you are going to college. It was Friday, and my mom gave me $1. There were 5 more years of Friday dollar bills, and I was old enough, too, to start getting after-school jobs and summer jobs, and I took almost all of that money and I deposited it in my college fund. And then it was my turn to be 17. I had sent out letters to colleges, and I had gotten acceptance to my first choice. So I went down to the Bank of Richmondville to take out a whole bunch of those dollar bills to start my college adventure. That man was still sitting behind that barred window with his suit and tie on. I walked up to take out a bunch of those dollars, and he pulled out a fresh, crisp, new envelope, and he put that money all in there. He passed it to me. He says, "Well, you still going to college?" "Yep." "Interest still compounded monthly?" "Yep." And he gave me a lollipop. I took that candy and I put it in my pocket, because at that moment, the only thing I wanted to taste was the sweetness of knowing that I was going to college And my mom, she paved that path for me, and she did it with a single weekly dollar bill.
Lona Bartlett. All right. Wonderful. Can you see why we had to have a second show? Our next storyteller comes to us from Pine Island, New York, which you might be tempted to think is close by, but she actually has the same 4-hour drive from Pine Island to Glens Falls that I have from just north of Boston, Massachusetts to Glens Falls. Now, here at Sharing the Fire, we try our best to give everybody the best possible experience, right? You guys here at the conference having a great time? Great socialization. We're really close to the Adirondacks, beautiful place. And we have Brian over here on sound, giving us the best possible sound we can have in this room. And for you folks out there in Cyberland, we try to give you the best possible experience. We have CJ back there at Command Central. I visited him this morning. He is surrounded by monitors, and it's absolutely Command Central. He's got all the controls there, trying to give you good sound. We don't forget about you. We know you are out there, and we are so glad, and thank you for joining us. But folks out there in Cyberland, I'm afraid that there is one thing going on at the conference, and it's not the beautiful views out the windows. It's not the socialization, the late night parties, and all the warmth that's here. It's the cookies. It's the cookies that are lovingly baked and brought to Sharing the Fire every year and distributed by our next storyteller. Please give it up for Madelyn Folino.
That's good. Okay. All right. Thank you, Bruce. Welcome to New York, where 12 million drivers share the roads with 2 million white-tailed deer. I live in Orange County, 60 miles northwest of the city, where the metro meets the wild, and we vie to have the most vehicle-deer collisions in the state, about 1,500 a year. Imagine an animal that can grow up to 400 pounds, that has a top speed of 40 miles an hour, with a vertical jump of 8 feet and a horizontal leap of 30 feet, crashing into your car, your speeding car. It's terrifying. It's traumatic. It's so commonplace. It happens to over 30,000 New Yorkers every year. My first encounter with a deer was on January 3rd, 2000. As the director of a small public library, I was usually last out the door. And that evening, I was happy because Y2K had just happened and our computers were perfect. And I was unhappy because I knew I had to go and pick up something for dinner. 8 miles to Warwick and then 8 miles home to Pine Island. So I started out moving south on State Route 94. And I was almost to the outskirts of the village of Florida when a deer bolted down a driveway between 2 little houses on my right and smashed into my headlight. I could feel the jolt of that impact in my bones and in my brains. I slammed on the brakes, and the deer flew through the air, crashed onto the roof of my car, slid down and kicked out the rear window with an explosion of glass, bounced off the trunk, and crashed onto the pavement in a flurry of thrashing legs. I pulled myself out of my little Chevy. What just happened? A pickup truck roared up. 2 guys in camo gear jumped out. Hey, lady, you want that deer? You know it's yours because you hit it. Cars began to slow and stop. A silver-haired gentleman on his way home to Greenwood Lake reached into his well-cut black wool overcoat and pulled out one of those new cell phones that people had begun to carry. "Don't worry," he said, "I'll call 911. I wasn't worried. I was numb. When the state trooper arrived, he hopped out of his cruiser and took a quick glance at the deer and then jumped back in the car and began to fill out a form on a clipboard. I stood at his open window with the traffic and the wind whipping behind me. It was 0 degrees that night, and I hurt all over. I think I was a little shocky. And the trooper informed me that the scene could not be cleared until the deer was dead. And no, he would not shoot it because discharge of a weapon required a second trooper as witness, and no one was available that night. He was really angry, and it took me years to understand that his leisurely approach to paperwork was to give the deer enough time to die, and that his annoyance probably stemmed from having to attend the same scene over and over again. When I finally got home that night, my husband said to me, "Why did you hit it?" I didn't see it. "Well, you weren't driving defensively." "There was nothing I could do." "Well, sounds like careless driving to me." And I tell you, the only fun part of this experience was going into work and telling my coworker Teresa about it, because she had recently divorced and was always complaining about how hard it was to meet men. And now I could say, just go out and hit a deer, and the men will appear, all kinds of men. My second encounter with a deer, I was driving home from work, this time in an Olds Cutlass Sierra that I had inherited from my mother, and I was just cruising along Pulaski Highway, an official New York State scenic highway, when a deer ran out opposite the Jaddos farm, and that deer ran head first into the rear car door behind me. And my husband said, "What are you doing? You're not driving defensively. This is carelessness. You have to learn to use the eyes in your head." My third encounter with a deer, I was driving home from work, and I was just coming down Figgles Hill on County Route 1, just before the flats that lead into Pine Island, with the cornfields on one side and the broccoli and the bok choy on the other side, and a deer jumped the irrigation ditch and ran smack into the front grille of the car, and then bounded away, which the prior deer had done also, because they don't always die. They don't usually die. They mostly wreck your car and run away. And you can probably guess what was said to me when I got home that night. Well, at this point, we had fixed up the Chevy and given it to our second daughter. And we fixed up the Olds and we gave it to our third daughter. And my husband got me a different car. It was a little white Nissan Sentra, and I never liked that car because it was too young and sporty for me. It had a souped-up engine and an amped-up stereo system and a lovely sunroof for better access by deer. And I don't think it had a muffler, but I said, good, maybe this car will be so noisy that it will scare the deer away. Because by now, 3 deer leaping in the dark, 3 different cars, 3 calls to my good new friend Anne Marie at Nationwide, you would think that that would be enough for anybody. And you would be wrong. Because Late one afternoon, we were coming home from our weekly 30-mile round trip to get groceries in Middletown, and we were traveling through New Hampton on Lower Road, and we had just passed a couple miles back Soon's Orchards, and we were going up a little incline next to a patch of woods. Right before that little brick house that always has the hundreds of blow-up Santas and reindeer and elves and snowmen that are always lying flat on the lawn, looking like some horrific Christmas massacre. And a deer charged out of the woods, and for 1 millisecond I saw that deer from black nose to white tail, and its length was a perfect match for the width of my little car. And then the middle of the car and the middle of the deer came together with that familiar meaty thud, and the deer bounded away. And we sat motionless and silent in the dark. I think my husband was in shock. And finally he said, from his seat behind the wheel, "I didn't see it." "I know," I said. "There was nothing I could do to avoid it." "I know," I said. "It's not my fault." "I know," I said. "You're just going to keep on saying that, aren't you?" "Yes, I am. Yes, I am." And I thought, now you know. Because there is nothing in your education, your experience, your skills, your background, your oh so impeccable driving record that can prepare you to suddenly meet a deer flying in the dark, or the dusk, or the dawn, or the day, anytime. And the best that you can hope for is to have a little grace and humility and a sense of humor, and to understand that you have just had a collision with nature. And unlike some of us, you are lucky to be alive. And so I quote to you the famous last line of Meditation 17, written hundreds of years ago by the famous metaphysical poet and cleric John Donne. "Therefore, send not to know for whom the deer aims. It aims for thee." Drive safe.
That was Madelyn Folino. And I don't know about you guys, but when I leave here later today and I'm driving down I-87, I do not think I'm going to go any faster than 25 miles per hour. Our next storyteller comes to us from the Connecticut shoreline, and she has the distinction of, during an 8-day period, twice refusing to go on the Oprah show. There's a story there somewhere, and we're not going to hear it today. And I know you're burning with as much curiosity as I am, so you may be inundated later on today by people with curious questions. Please give it up for Denise Manning Keys Page.
It's a rare day I accepted help. Thank you. Okay. Tears are gathering in the corner of my eyes, and I'm leaning helplessly on my walker. Between me and entrance to my house is a stoop about this high, and I can't climb it. My left leg, is filled with cement. I had had knee replacement surgery a few years before, and it had been fine. But recently, I had gotten an infection in that leg. And the cure is to take out the prosthetic device, attach antibiotics into your heart intravenously, replace the space where you once had a prosthetic with cement, and wait 3 months or more for the antibiotic to kill the infection, and take out the cement if it hasn't cracked, and replace the prosthetic device. I'm standing here recently relieved from the hospital. I had been there 10 days and it's way too soon. You see, I was supposed to go to a convalescent facility, but it's March 2021 and COVID is way too rampant for me to consider such a thing. So I'm standing there in the March cold with my neighbor who had graciously brought me home from the hospital. And try as I might, I can't lift this leg to the stoop. Leaning on this walker, I can't help it. I cry out in anguish. I can't. I just can't do this. And the word can't, the cold snatches it up and it hovers in the air and it reverberates and it takes me back, decades back. I'm 13. I'm sitting at my dinner table with my parents and my brothers. And before me is a plate with an unfinished pork chop, some mashed potatoes, and some green peas. Le Sueur early peas. My mother had bought them specifically in the hopes that the smaller sphere would be something that I would ingest. I'm looking at these peas, and these peas are the impediment to my goal, just as this soup would be all these decades later. You see, we had a rule in our household. You know the rule. You don't get excused from the table until you try everything on your plate. These legumes were rolling around my plate in a taunting manner, and I had to figure out a way to get to them. You see, tonight of all nights, I couldn't be slowed down. I had a really important engagement. And this is when I have to reveal that I was about 13, 14, and I was a teenage dud at parties. You see, I couldn't sing at all, and I danced even worse. And I was jealous of my friends who would shake a tail feather and belt out Ain't No Way, and all the kids would gather around, and I would sit in the corner, and boys would ask me to dance, but I always said no, because no one needed to see how badly I danced. So I felt like a wallflower, because I was. But who wants to be a wallflower? But at Teresa's party the month before, I made a discovery. And this discovery was going to be my journey to teenage stardom. But to get there, I had to eat these peas. And so the genius comes, and I have a plan. I take 2 peas, a big mound of potatoes, mashed potatoes, stick them in the middle. I want to hold my nose, but I know my parents won't tolerate that. So instead, I just open my mouth wide. I toss it back, making sure not to hit any taste buds, and then I gulp. Success! I look at my parents as if I had just completed a triple toe loop. You see, the one thing I was good at was figure skating, but none of my friends had skating rinks in their homes, so I never got to show that off at parties. Well, my parents are looking at me with something, if not quite respect, but I take advantage of the moment and I say, can I be excused now? And they resign, say, okay. So I rush down to the rec room. It's what today we might call a man cave. This was specifically my dad's room. And in this room was all the tributes to him. See, my dad was a winner in all things. This room had plaques and citations from all the governors who had ever been in Connecticut during his lifetime, a citation from President Kennedy, from President Johnson, and years later from Nixon. It had his honorary doctorate degree. It had all his trophies from golf and football. My dad was a winner. And this winner, he was the guide to my teenage superstardom. So down the stairs before me is my pathway. It's a long green pathway with a white stripe down the middle and a net stretched tautly across its center. The ping pong table I had lobbied for. I had recruited my brothers to beg for a ping pong table because at Teresa's party the month before, I noticed that the kids who played ping pong well or pool well, they got a lot of juice and a lot of respect too. And I looked at the ping pong, I knew immediately I was going to be good at this. So after a few minutes, my dad comes down and our lessons begin. He comes over and he hands me the paddle and he shows me 2 different ways that I can hold it. Both of them feel awkward and foreign. So I let him suggest which way. With that suggestion, I take the paddle, he goes to the other side of the table, he volleys the ball over to me. A swing and a miss, plunk. I retrieve the ball, I toss it back to him. He tosses it to me, a swing and a miss, plunk. I retrieve the ball, toss it back to him, he volleys it to me, swing and a miss, plunk. Well, I don't know a lot, but I'm fairly certain that chasing a ping pong ball around a playroom floor cannot be the pathway to teenage stardom. This continues for a little bit. My brothers come down to join. They get to play the next games, if there ever was one. And my father's tossing it and swinging a miss, plunk, swinging a miss, plunk. I had enough. I put the paddle down on the table and I say, thank you, Daddy. This just isn't my game. And I head for the stairs, and I get to about stair number 2.5 when this booming voice says, and where do you think you're going? Oh, Daddy, I have so much homework, and this should work, because school always comes first. And the boys want to play. The room is silent. And then I say, I just can't play this game. It was as if all the oxygen was drained out of the room as the 3 males in the room sucked in their breath collectively. I had said the one 4-letter word absolutely forbidden in our household. C-A-N-T. Usually when that word was uttered, it was followed by a sermon and some stories. And the sermon was, D, there's no such thing as can't. There is. I haven't practiced long enough. I haven't done enough research. I'm not focusing. I just don't have enough information yet. But not can't. Imagine where would we be if our ancestors had allowed can't to stop them. And we looked at our parents when they said this, and we knew that they were evidence of the truth of my father's final words. Nothing beats a failure but a good try. I'd caught the words, I knew my mistake, I knew I only had one recourse. And so, with as much as a flounce as I could manage in a mini skirt, I turned around and made it back to the pool table. I picked up my paddle. And I lulled myself into a daydream. My father was prattling on some mumbo-jumbo about hand-eye coordination and anticipation and bend your knees and blah, 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 going on, and I'm daydreaming myself into someplace far, far away. And then suddenly, in my daydreaming, I hear a sound I hadn't heard before. And I look at the paddle. It had connected with the ball, and the ball goes over the net. And then I did it, and then the sound changes. I hear not ping pong plunk, but ping ping pong, ping pong. This is fun. This is good. I'm going to really be good at this. And so the evening goes on, and I play, and I learned that I can do this if I just practice. And I did become a lean, mean ping pong playing machine. Never at those parties, though, because by the time I perfected my English and how to defend the slams and serves that nobody could return, our parties had graduated. We were now doing the parties that as soon as the parents stepped out the room, we turned off the lights, we danced body to body, me too, delighting in the discovery of gender difference. This day, standing there in March with this stoop that I can't overcome, I'm remembering the day with my dad when he shows me that nothing beats a failure but a good try. I turn to my neighbor who had been waiting so patiently, and I say to her, if you can find a stone about half the height of my stoop, I can make that. I'm sure I can. And a few minutes later, she appears with a stone that she puts down about half the height of the stoop. And then with everything in me, I will this leg up on the stoop. And then I follow. And then I will the good leg onto my doorway, the door now open, and the leg, the cement leg, follows. I am sweating and crying at the same time from the effort and the achievement. And in the open door before me, as we open the door on the wall just before me, in my dining room is the framed photo of my dad. Yes, you can, Dee. Yes, you can. Thank you. Thank you.
Denise Page. Well, I can't think of anything to say after that. Wait a minute. I think I just did. All right, our penultimate storyteller. I love that word, penultimate. Our penultimate storyteller comes to us from Greater Boston, Massachusetts. And she once was an extra in an Agnes Varda film in France. And apparently, even though she was only an extra, there was a close-up of her in the film. How about that? So she's achieved film stardom, I guess. Please welcome to the stage Cindy Rivka Marshall.
Hello. Don't need it, yeah. Hi, everyone. So good to be here. Thank you. What a community to be with this weekend, isn't it? We were sitting in the office of the adoption agency, and my spouse and I were handed a small photograph. It was the first time we were seeing the face of our daughter. She would be arriving soon, and I had to get busy. So I started looking through books, collections of Chinese folktales, because I would have to tell her stories of her birth culture. One story jumped out at me, and I started to play with it, to adapt it, to make it about a child rather than a man. And I wasn't sure at the time why I was telling this story. Mei, do not go outside the courtyard. Little sister, don't go down the road. Never leave the village gate. There are wild animals in the forest. But one day, when everybody was busy, Maymay saw a beautiful bird with brilliantly colored feathers, and it flitted from branch to branch, and she wanted to follow it. She went out the courtyard. She went just a little down the road, and then, without realizing, Maymay went out the village gate and into the forest, just following the bird and not watching where she was stepping. Her feet suddenly whoosh, flew out from under her, and Maymay, her whole body slid down to a deep hole beneath the ground. It smelled like animals. And Maymay tried to climb back up, but it was so slippery and steep she couldn't pull herself out. And then she felt something rubbing against her legs. Well, as her eyes grew used to the dim light, she saw 2 tiny tiger cubs. They looked like kittens, and they were rolling about. She couldn't resist and reached down to stroke them. A tiger leapt into the lair, teeth bared, but then looked at Maymay curiously and settled down. The mother tiger could see that her cubs were not in danger. And after a bit, the mother tiger went out and came back with some meat that she had hunted. She threw pieces to her cubs. And in time, she even gave Maymay some food. The mother tiger left and came back many times, and Maymay had no idea how long she had been down there. Her family must be so worried. The tiger cubs were growing rapidly, and the lair was getting very cramped. And then the moment came when the mother tiger crouched down and nudged her babies to climb onto her back. And one by one, she climbed out of that hole and brought them up to the surface again. Mother tiger? Mother tiger, don't leave me here. And the mother tiger came back down. She crouched, and Maymay dug her fingers into the fur. She held on tightly, and it was a very tight squeeze. But she got up onto the ground again. She could breathe the fresh air. But the mother tiger was beginning to walk away, and Maymay knew that she was lost. Wait, Mother Tiger, can you help me find my way home? Well, the mother tiger began to sniff the ground, turned and trotted along, and Maymay and the cubs scrambled after her. And then they came to a place where through the trees Maymay could see a road. And she peered around and saw the village gate. There were people there. Maymay? She's alive after all this time. They began to run closer, and then they saw behind the tree. It's a tiger! Get your spears! No. This mother tiger, she took care of me like her own. Don't harm her. And the villagers watched in amazement as Maymay looked deep into the tiger's eyes. Thank you. I will remember you. And the tiger cubs climbed up and licked the tears from Maymay's cheeks. they ran off deep into the forest, never to come near that village again. And this tale of the trusty tiger from several hundred years ago, the Qing dynasty, well, it traveled far and wide and was even heard told in Massachusetts, in my daughter's bedroom. And by that time, I had learned a few more things about her. She had been cared for well by a foster mother in her early months. And she had been born in the year of the tiger. Thank you.
Wonderful. And as an adoptive dad, I really appreciate that story. All right, our last storyteller, our last storyteller comes to us from Boston proper, Massachusetts. And I love this detail, and I think you guys are going to really love this too. She got her performance start playing a wench at the no longer existent Boston restaurant Medieval Manor. How about that?
More beer, wench. Tattooed on my heart. No.
And I can't wait to hear that story. And I'm not going to hear it today, and neither are you, because she's got a different one for us. But please welcome to the stage Diane Edgecomb.
There we go. All right. I would like to dedicate this story to the brave people of Poland and to the brave people of Ukraine. The train was well on its way from West Germany to Poland. It was 1984, and the next stop was going to be the checkpoint. It was going to be the place in between West Germany and East Germany. It was going to be the border, and beyond that, it was going to be behind the Iron Curtain. My younger sister and I had at last found a compartment on the train. For some reason, even though we looked into the compartments and we could see that there was space, no one would let us in until at last we looked into one compartment. There were 2 empty seats opposite an elderly couple. They looked like Polish farmers, and they let us in, and we sat down facing them for our ride towards the border. On the platform, it had been such an unnerving scene. I've been at train platforms before, but at this one, everyone was so restless, and people were hugging each other and crying as though they were never going to see each other again. And there was so much luggage and boxes and crates everywhere. And when the train finally pulled into the station, there was such a swarm to get onto the train. People pushing each other, everybody trying to get into compartments as fast as they could, throwing the windows open, signaling to their friends on the platforms, and they were shoving boxes through the windows. They were shoving crates through the windows as fast as they could, as much as they could, cramming as much as they could to go towards poor Poland. We had our treasures as well. In the hurried phone call I had with my friend Zbigniew Sinkudis on the phone, I was going to meet him in Poland. He was a theater artist, but he sounded so tense at that moment. He said, "Bring meat, as much as you can, but hide it. Don't report it. They will take it from you. And US dollars, don't report them all." I said, "Well, what about the Polish currency, the zlotys? I should be, getting some of that." He said, "Forget it. It's a worthless currency. Bring US dollars, but hide them. There's a black market here. maybe we can use it. And so I'd taken a bunch of money and I'd wadded it up and I stuffed it in a jean pocket and I'd rolled up my jeans as tight as I could and put it in the bottom of my backpack. And I thought, well, if they ask me, I'll just say, hey, you know, I just forgot about the money. I forgot that it was there. I had no idea what life was like behind the Iron Curtain. When I told my mother I was going to visit my friend, the theater artist Vizhik Kudis, he was forming an international company. Maybe someday I could be part of it. She said, what are you talking about? This is an authoritarian regime. And I was so naive, I thought, you're the authoritarian regime. She said, they're under communist control. They're under martial law. And what are you thinking? You're bringing your younger brothers, your younger sister Martha. It was too late. We were heading towards Poland. Martha had scared the heart out of me on the train. We were looking for a compartment, and she's a gutsy girl. She decided to go to another car we hadn't explored, and she stepped onto the gangway. And then she started into the car, it opened, and it was the luggage car, it was the baggage car. And as soon as she entered it, an official from the platform jumped onto the train. He was yelling, Schnell, Schnell, and he was chasing her through the baggage car with her backpack on her back. Schnell, Schnell, stop, stop. And my sister was running, and she was running, and then she jumped off the baggage car onto the platform. I'm leaning out the side, Martha, I said, Martha, Schnell, they were running, and I reached out my hand, and I pulled her onto the train. And they couldn't get us now. She was just graduated from college, fine now, didn't even seem to remember the incident, just leafing through a Time magazine. The Polish couple opposite us, I was sure they were farmers. They were dressed in very sturdy, poor clothing, but their hands, they were thick. And they looked like they worked with plants. They looked like they worked with animals. And they were keeping them very tightly held in their laps. But then the man reached over to the woman and he touched her on the arm. He could hear that we were speaking English. He could hear that it was American. And he leaned forward towards me. He leaned forward and he looked into my eyes. And he leaned forward and he said, have you heard about our struggle? Have you heard about our struggle? It was true. There was a struggle. Things were going on. I didn't believe it. I didn't know anything about it. And my sister and I fell asleep, leaning against each other. And then, the train stopped and there were riot lights outside the train. They were such bright yellow, you couldn't believe it. And then there was sound of dogs and men running alongside the train, tall men dressed in military. It was the East German military. And they came onto the train. They said, Reichspass, Reichspass, Reichspass. You could hear the compartment doors closing and ours opened and there were two military men, Reichspass. And I could see that the Poles had already handed over their passports, and I reached into my pouch and I pulled out a U.S. passport, and I, for the first time, realized, oh my God, this is incredible. This is an incredible document. Everyone wants this. And I turned to look at him. In the U.S., you turn, I have nothing to hide, right? You look the officer in you. I looked at him and I handed my passport, and as soon as I looked him in the eye, his eyes locked on mine. And I thought, what is he doing? What is he doing? He was like boring into my eyes. He was like looking so hard at me. I realized I got to look down. And then I saw the Poles were looking down too. And I thought, that's it. He doesn't care that I look in his eyes. He wants me to be submissive. As we got closer to my friend's city, we were in Poland. Everything was so poor. Even in the beauty of the morning light, everything was falling down, breaking or broken. But as we pulled into the station, there was my friend, the youthful, wonderful theater artist. He'd seen us. He was waving. He was running beside the train, full of youth and energy. And when we got off the train, he gave me a hug and he said, the first dove has returned to the ark. But Poland was so difficult. That first afternoon, I saw him unwrap brown paper. It was the rations he'd waited in line for with a few pieces of meat. And with his back to me, I could see him say to his wife, "This is how I'm supposed to feed my family for a month." And I learned my first Polish words. Nie ma. We don't have any. Nie ma. There isn't any. He said, "I'm going to take you to the theater." He was so proud of Polish theater, and he should have been. "I'm going to take you to the theater." We got onto the trolley cars, but on every trolley car, there was a military man. And the people didn't talk with each other, they just looked down. And when we got to the theater, I felt so badly for him. It was closed. It was shuttered. On the way back, he tried to cheer me up. He said, "There's our iconic Lover's Bridge, a beautiful arch made of beautiful teal metal, but I could see beyond the arch. I saw military marching in the park, and I could hear the martial songs." "Where are you flying to after you leave Poland?" he asked me. I said, "We're going to Brussels." He said, "Brussels? You're so bourgeois." He said, "I'm going to trade your tickets for Amsterdam." And so we waited in line for a day to trade our tickets for Amsterdam. And that night, when we were sitting together with him the last night, and before that, I do have to say, the other thing that I saw after he traded our tickets for Amsterdam, Martha and I, my younger sister, standing there watching him dart in and out of traffic in the rain, holding US dollars, finding a cab, showing him the US dollars, and letting him know he would get them the next morning when he came to take us to the airport. That last night, he pulled ice-cold Polish vodka out of the freezer, Zubrowka, bison weed vodka, and he poured us each a shot. But as we were drinking, I knew that he was also probing us in a way, trying to see what our mettle was. And I know that Martha passed the test because no matter what question he asked, she evaded and dodged and said something clever. And he looked at her and he said, "Martha, you are someone I could steal horses with." When we went up the gangplank to the plane, there were military with machine guns on either side of that gangplank. And when the pilot said, "We've landed in Amsterdam," the whole plane exploded with applause and cheers and laughter and tears. We'd landed in freedom. I've been in an authoritarian regime. I never thought I'd see the noose tightening around the neck here, wanting people to look down. And I remember stealing horses. You have to steal horses because sometimes the horses that you're stealing belong to you.
Diane Edgecomb. Diane, do I remember correctly from your audition recording that that Martha was not aware that Schnell meant stop?
No, I don't know. I don't know.
I thought I remembered that. Anyway, can we get all the tellers back here on the stage for a photo op? Thank you all for coming. We know that you here at the Sharing the Fire in person and you out there in the virtual land had options this morning. You had other things you could have been doing, and we're so pleased that you decided to come and spend your morning here. Thank you. Group power if you're able.